Team, I'd like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us here today. As we gather here in Antalya, we're of course reminded that terrorism remains one of the most complex and evolving threats facing the international community. Terrorist groups continually adapt, exploiting uncertainties, weakened governance structures, and rapidly advancing technologies. It's therefore crucial that our approaches to counterterrorism evolve as swiftly and as strategically as the threat themselves. Recent years have seen significant attention to the global multilateral counterterrorism framework, marked by calls from some to rethink this architecture. However, a clear international consensus on the best path forward is still pending. Efforts continue towards creating a more inclusive, adaptable, and rights-respecting strategy. So international cooperation plays a pivotal role. That will be the purpose of our panel here today. We have some extremely distinguished panelists to whom I will shortly give the floor. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Stephen Hill. I am the Executive Secretary of the International Institute for Justice and the Rule of Law, a multilateral institution based in Malta. We have a mission to help build the capacity of criminal justice practitioners to contribute to the fight against terrorism using the rule of law. And I think that our work helps exemplify the cooperative spirit that is needed in this whole space. Turkey, our host country, has been a vital partner and supporter of the work of my organization, including by serving as our co-chair for 5 years of our 10-year existence. So thank you for having us here. Without any further ado, and just noting that we have a limited time for the panel, and I would still like to leave room for question and answer to the audience, I would like to begin with our panelists. I will first give the floor. I'm going to switch to French right now, so please put your headset if necessary. Je vais commencer. J'ai le grand honneur de donner la parole à son Excellence, Monsieur le ministre Abdoulaye Sabre Fadoul, ministre des Affaires étrangères, de l'intégration africaine.
First of all, I would like to give floor to Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, African Integration and Chadian Abroad, Republic of Chad, Abdoulaye Sabre Fadoul, and he is a very important person. And first of all, esteemed Minister, I would like to give floor to you.
Merci, Stéphane.
First of all, thank you very much, Stephen. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I am really happy to be here together with you. And I would like to thank the organizing committee of this panel. And also, I would like to thank the Turkish authority for inviting us to Antalya for this diplomacy forum. This is the fourth one, and still it's very effective as an international forum. And today, we are going to talk about terrorism. Terrorism is at the center of Africa and very effective in Chad, and especially starting from Mauritania up to Sudan. For the last couple of years, especially as of 2010, our country, as some other African countries, faces different terrorism threats. First of all, a threat was seen in Chad region. Of course, Chad, Nigeria, and Cameroon we have seen that Boko Haram, a terrorist organization, was seen, and we know that they caused more than thousands of individuals' death. And this is like a terrorist pandemic. And for Mali, Burkina, and it was also effective in Nigeria.
Les conséquences de ces groupes terroristes qui, pour certains, sont affiliés à Al-Qaïda.
And some of them are related to Al-Qaeda and
l'État islamique. En 2013,
some of them act differently as Islamic ones. And first there was a call in our country, and we had the response for Mali and the capital for Mali, and there was a significant terrorist organization, and it was under the terrorist organization. Then we had the opportunity to stop it. So first of all, I would like to draw this framework in order to make it understandable. In our country, and also we would like to express what is going on around our country. As Chad, we have experienced attacks, assassinations, and of course there were attacks to our military camps. Number of deaths occurred. We had losses. In addition, there were some rebellions. Regarding our law enforcement forces, I may express that they fight very well, and I may say that we are in a better position. In terms of your understanding, actually, you can imagine Chad as a very big lake, and there are very small islands in that lake. So in order to find and identify the location of those terrorists, it's really difficult. And we have 4 different countries, and for all those borders, it is really difficult to have the surveillance in Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and in Mali. So I'm talking about those 3 country borders, and it is very complicated. And in order to respond, of course, there is a need for significant regional cooperation, and there should also be multilateral informative politics, and also especially we have been providing information at local level. And for some of those terrorist organizations, we can see that they would like to have their power in those regions, and we are trying to follow them because our purpose is to stop them and to prevent their attacks in those regions. And we believe that if there will be international cooperation, both there will be military strengthening, solidarity, and there will be finance. In addition to all, there could also be military training. Together with the use of advanced technology, then they are going to be facilitators on site for counterterrorism, because because after the occupation of these lands, they can act very rapidly, both for the soldiers and also we are talking about different actions. If I am not wrong, on the 25th of March, once again there was an attack in Chad Lake Basin, and for the first time there was the vehicles used with unmanned vehicles, AUUs, and there was a bomb used for this terrorist organization Boko Haram, and then actually there was the bomb, and then for this attack then we realized that they are able to adapt themselves for new technologies. I hope it was not very long. Thank you very much for your speech, and thank you very much for your updated recent opinions, and especially for regional cooperation and also for international cooperation you have mentioned. Now I'm going to come back to English.
Excellency, Dr. Shaya Mohsen Al-Zindani, Yemen's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates, who brings extensive diplomatic experience and critical insights into addressing terrorism amidst the complex scenarios of his region, to hear about Yemen's experience at the front lines of both conflict and counterterrorism. Your Excellency, you have the floor. Thank you very much for being with us.
شكرا جزيلا. أولا نشكر الجهة المنظمة على إقامة هذه
I would like to thank the organization committee for this nice event. Of course, we are talking about a very significant topic, not only in our country. This is also related to other countries. First of all, thank you very much for your attention. Generally, when we talk about terror, of course, it is under the interest of everyone. And I'm going to talk about the experience of Republic of Yemen. I'm not going to talk about all the details, but I may say that this is a very difficult topic to discuss, because this is an international case. Because I would like to say this is a cross-border topic. This is like a curse, because in practice it is really challenging, and there could be various approaches. However, we have not reached to a conclusion, and there could be different explanations, and there are different relevant authorities, and they may express different opinions. So, for example, there was Al-Qaeda in Arabian Peninsula, and everything was managed from that location for Africa, for Yemen, for Afghanistan, for all other regions. And of course, social support was also the case during that time. And sometimes we also hear that there was the connection between terrorism and the religion. So there could be different reasons. There could be religious terror in Saudi Arabia, or of course the political structure, social structure can be different in different countries, and there could be different terrorist organizations. At international level, we cannot hear a single voice. And Al-Qaeda was at a specific location, then we know that they moved to some other places. And the purpose was to stop them at the origin. And there is also some religious extremism. There could be Daesh, Al-Qaeda, and once again, there was an understanding of Houthis. So there was the attention given to such religious elements. And it is now very obvious there could be different groups, different fractions. They come together and however, as we have stated, so there could be minor fractions and they can be as a threat for a country. And Houthis is also one of those. For example, they have all those terrorist organizations have those UAVs. Unfortunately, they benefit from the technology. So they also use marine transportation, the vessels, and they can have the threat on those vessels. So this is not a problem of a single country when we talk about terrorist organizations. And of course, it is a must to have international cooperation. And we know that there is still the existence of some terrorist organizations in Yemen. For example, there are destroyers, and also we know that there were also attacks for the warplanes. So briefly, as a summary, thank you. Apologies that I made the summary.
Not at all, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. It was very important to hear about your experience and your perspective, especially with the changing nature of the threat is very interesting. Also the theme of the use of new technologies, which I see figured in both ministers' presentations. So thank you very much, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the Republic of Yemen. I would now like to give the floor to Professor Dr. Alex P. Schmidt, a globally recognized terrorism expert and research fellow at the International Center for Counterterrorism in The Hague, in the Netherlands, and his extensive experience includes a very interesting recent study of trends in counterterrorism, which I hope he could speak to us about briefly today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Antalya Forum, for the invitation. Thank you for being here. It has been said that a problem well defined is a problem half solved. Well, we all know that we are not there yet. In the region I come from, NATO has a definition, the European Union has one, the Council of Europe, another one, the UN, for which I worked for many years, has only a draft definition, which is already 24 years old, but cannot be finalized. And on top of that, we've been added with a new term, violent extremism. So in an article that was recently translated into Turkish by the colleague on the left side here with his journal, I outlined some of the difficulties. If you have a broad definition, you have a lot of terrorism. If you have a narrow one, you have less. But there are 20 different types of terrorism, from lone wolf terrorism to cyber terrorism. I still have to see the first instance of cyber terrorism, but the term is there. There are hundreds of terrorist groups, there are thousands of individual terrorists, all motivated by different causes, aiming to achieve dozens of religious and secular goals, and try to impress, shock, influence, manipulate us. So what are the main trends? I used to work together with START in the University of Maryland, and they developed a beautiful database which was unfortunately discontinued in 2020. So I'm looking at 50 years using their data mainly, and I discovered 20 trends, 18 bad ones and 2 not so bad ones. But first, just look at the overall figures. In that period, that database, START, Global Terrorism Database, recorded more than 200,000 terrorist incidents worldwide, causing more than 450,000 fatalities and more injured, of course. About 200,000 of these incidents took place in active war zones like Yemen, Somalia, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, making it difficult to distinguish them from war crimes. So my own shortest definition of terrorism is the peacetime equivalent of war crimes that covers then the whole spectrum. The area I come from has seen relatively few incidents compared to the Middle East and North Africa and Southeast Asia. Terrorism has been labeled in the 19th century the philosophy of the bomb, and indeed half of the incidents are bomb incidents, but there are also gun incidents, targeted assassinations meant to scare others, kidnappings, many of them terrorist or a mix of terrorism and organized crime, acts of hostage taking. These are the main types. If you look at the casualties, in those 50 years I looked at, there are only about 150 incidents that caused more than 100 fatalities. Most of the terrorist attacks cause fewer, usually 5 or less. And actually, almost half of the incidents did not cause any deaths, but injured, or there were explosions at 2 o'clock in the night in front of an embassy, that sort of things. So what are the 20 trends I identified looking at the data? The first trend, the positive one, is hijackings have gone down tremendously. That, of course, was achieved with one specific technique. You saw it here today, body search of everybody who goes into an airplane. So with the exception of 9/11, that problem has been solved. The price, of course, that we are all suspects. The second element, trend that was clearly discernible in the period, left-wing terrorism has gone down. That has two causes. Communism lost its attraction with the collapse of the Soviet Union, and funding for left-wing terrorism and students in Western Europe therefore also decreased. The most significant trend of all in the period is, however, the rise of non-secular terrorism, especially after the mullahs managed to conquer Iraq. A French think tank, Von der Pol, recorded for the whole period until April last year 66,000 Islamist attacks, causing nearly 250,000 deaths. The majority of these attacks took place in Muslim countries, and the majority of the victims were again Muslims. Europe complains a lot about jihadist terrorism, but only half of 1% actually occurred in Western Europe or Northern America. The fourth trend, linked to the third, is a clear rise of suicide terrorism, a trend that started with Hezbollah in the early 80s, but reached now 40 different groups. Strange enough, even secular groups like the PKK have engaged in suicide terrorism. Suicide terrorism, and that's the fifth trend, allows you to get closer to your object, so there has been a rise of lethality linked to terrorist attacks thanks to that. The other major trend of the last years is, of course, a shift from the epicentrum from the Middle East and Southeast Asia to sub-Saharan Africa. A trend that has been much complained about in the West is the rise of right-wing terrorism. Think of the Breivik attack in Utoya, but so far far-right terrorism has not yet reached the same levels like religious terrorism. Yet another trend, that is number 8, is the rise of lone wolf, lone actor attacks, mainly in the West. The perpetrators now are as young as 13 years old. It's possible to infiltrate a terrorist cell or organization, but lone actors are very difficult to catch unless they parade already themselves on the internet, which is the main way of catching them these days. One of the most ominous trends is something called stochastic terrorism. That goes like that. A politician in government or out of government says, well, these and these people are enemies of the people, and they really shouldn't be here. Somebody picks it up and says, well, if that's an enemy of a people and this great leader says that, I'm going to do the work for him. And so we see a lot of indirect incitements to terrorism. You can't blame the one who said these are the enemies of the people, but the execution, of course, says, well, I did it to please leader one, leader two. That's called stochastic terrorism. You can say that after such an incitement, the chance that somebody will go out and do what somebody else suggested is rising. Then what is another trend is that the ideological background of terrorists is no longer very clear, left-wing, right-wing, nationalist or jihadist. We find among younger terrorists a sort of salad bar ideology. They take a little bit from here, a little bit from there. What is also another trend, that's number 11 on my list, is the live streaming of terrorist attacks with a camera installed on your head, like in the Christchurch attack, so that the terrorists no longer depend on the mass media for the propagation of their deed. They can stream it directly on the internet. Yet another attack we see, and that's an old one that goes back to the Sicari 2,000 years, is the attacks with knives and machetes, very primitive instruments. It's special techniques that's associated with mentally unstable persons, disturbed persons. It's very hard to stop. Then, of course, that is probably the most significant trend these days, is the rise in drones for the use of terrorism. The war in the Ukraine has demonstrated the multiple uses of drones for attacks, terrorist and non-terrorist. And in the last 6 years, from 2018 to 2024, there have been no fewer than 810 drone attacks carried out by non-state actor. And it's very difficult to catch these drones. You need laser guns and all sorts of things. Another primitive way of attacks, number 14 on my list, is ramming attacks by cars and trucks. Between 1970 and 2020, there have been more than 300 such attacks, and some of them have quite been casualty-rich, like the 14 Juillet attack in Nice, France, which killed with a truck 86 people and injured almost 400. A worrying trend we see in Eastern Europe is that terrorists released from prison are not rehabilitated, but go back and continue that. So number 16 on my list is that we have jihadist attacks that are from people who were not original jihadists, but they came to Western Europe, went through the asylum procedure with all the uncertainty. They were probably traumatized at home to begin with, and here, traumatized in the West, they start going for jihadist cause. What we have seen, of course, in response to the attacks of 7 October from Gaza is an attack against Jewish institutions in the West in support of the Palestinian cause. Another attack, number 18 on my list, is the anti-establishment attacks, which are against politicians, not even of the top level, but on the community level, often combined with hate messages that sometimes lead then to the stochastic type of terrorism. There has been also, that is probably a byproduct of emancipation, of a rise of females engaging in terrorist attacks. Women have usually not been as violent as men. They might have been as aggressive as men, but not as violent, and that is also a trend. Now, finally, a good trend for the last one. We heard this morning from a spokesman from CTBTO about the nuclear threat, but Actually, there have been quite a number of people after 9/11 who said it's only a question when, not if, when terrorists will use weapons of mass destruction. It has not happened. No biological attacks except a few, like the anthrax attacks or the attacks in the underground of Japan by Mao Shinriko. Radiological attacks, practically none. Chemical attacks, there have been, but by state actors like the Assad regime in Syria, but nothing on the front of nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So that at least is the good trend. But what is the bad thing about the whole way we've been fighting terrorism? The sad thing is that counterterrorism is much worse than terrorism in terms of civilian deaths. The Watson Institute, Brown University, Rhode Island, has kept track of the human costs of counterterrorism. After 9/11, with the 3,000 fatalities, there was a US response, some would say over-response, and that has led to the death of almost 1 million people worldwide. And of these, 432,000 were civilians killed in direct violence by all parties in this global war on terror. 3.6 to 3.8 million people have been indirectly killed by the post-9/11 things, and 38 million people have been displaced in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, the Philippines. The sad thing is the way the war on terror was fought was worse. The disease was worse than the cure was worse than the disease. And we see the same thing in Gaza with 1,200 killed, 250 abducted, and now we see more than 50,000 fatalities and many more casualties. So the overreaction is a bad thing. So it's urgently needed that the international counter-terrorist community looks at another way of fighting terrorism. Well, terrorism consists of violence, it consists of communication of violence. You have to attack the communication more effectively than it has been done. And you have to be working more on the prevention of radicalization. So there is our challenge to find better solutions to what is a bad problem getting worse over the years. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor, for running through all of the trends that you've recognized from the past 50 years. I'd like now to give the floor to our final panelist, Professor Dr. Serhat Erkmen, who is a prominent academic specialized in terrorism dynamics. He is associated with the Research Center for Defense Against Terrorism and Radicalization, which is known as TERAM, based in Ankara. And it's a pleasure to have you. I think that your presentation can complement Professor Schmidt in the sense that you can speak a bit about the future trends. And then, just for everybody's information, we will stay here until 6 p.m. because we had the late start. So I will give, hopefully after Professor Erkmen, I can give the ministers a chance to say a couple more words if they like, and then we can open the floor for questions and discussion. So Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. First of all, it's a great honor for me to be with distinguished speakers. And I'm going to focus on some future trends, as you said. To be quick, and both analytic and quick, I focus on the 5 main trends that may affect the current 5 to 10 years. These are geopolitical developments, economic threats, environmental factors and climate change, rapid social change, maybe reaction to rapid social change, and role of technology. let me start with the geopolitical developments. Geopolitical factors and change in international system have always affected international terrorism or terrorism itself as a fact. But currently we are at the age of maybe to return to multipolarity and also growing power struggle and foreign interventions and formation of new large-scale regional alliances. And these all trends or dynamics may trigger new conflicting dynamics in international system that may cause new failed states, unfortunately, especially in Southwest Asia, Africa, and new unconventional warfare areas that may appear. We may face more state-sponsored terrorism in different cases. And of course, focusing on great power struggle might limit the capacity of states to fight against terrorism. So this is one of the, my first point related to potential geopolitical developments in the coming 5 to 10 years. The second one is economic threats. Terrorism has taken on more identity-oriented character in the last, let's say, 2 decades. And it caused abuse of religion and ethnicity-based or ethnic-based separatism in many countries. But the changing conditions of world economy may cause economic reactions play a greater role than previous times. And inequality in income distribution fuels more extremism, and decreased capacity of states to find solution to their economic problems may also cause more terrorism-related issues. And also terrorist organizations may have some advantages to diversification of the means of financing terrorism due to the change in world economy. The third one is environmental factors and the climate change. Unfortunately, impact of drought, resource scarcity, and economic crisis due to climate change affect many terrorist organizations in different parts of the world. Even one of the reasons, not the first one maybe, but one of the reasons that ISIS found some ground in Syria and Iraq in mid-2010, or mid-2013, 2014 are related to drought and some climate change issues, and also conflicts related to take more sources play a greater role, I believe. And of course, climate change affects people's acts and their way of life very quick, which also brings me to fourth point, social factors. As a result of that climate change and environmental factors, plus economic reasons, cause migration. Migration itself is not a cause of or main source of terrorism, and sometimes it causes radicalization among the communities that resist new social dynamics in their own countries, in their own places, let's say cities. So the rapid change, rapid social changes cause new kind of overly defensive attitude of some local groups that causes xenophobia, racism, and more religiously motivated and different kind of religiously motivated terrorist actions, and of course far-right extremism, or maybe better definition, far-right terrorism, because as you know there is a discussion on it. Although it's far-left terrorism, it's called as far-right extremism. I believe that it should be underlined as far-right terrorism as well. And the last point is the role of technology. Well, we are at the age of technology, and technology brings many different and facilitating things to our lives. It contributes our well-being, our economy. These are all facts. But it also contributes some differences in terrorism, and the technological developments provide easier, cheaper, faster, and stronger access for terrorist organizations to finance, to inspire, to organize, and it also contributes radicalization, online radicalization especially, recruitment and attack. So we have to take into account the change in technology very much, because the reason is so simple. Unfortunately, terrorist organizations learn quicker than states, and sometimes even they learn quicker than security forces, and they adapt, even adapting themselves for the new developments are easier for them. So, and the cost is human life. That's why we have to be vigilant on the change in technology. Let me stop here and give the floor to our speakers.
Thank you so much, Professor Erkman. You gave us 5 future trends, which of course mirror some of the 5 historic trends. That is geopolitics, economics, environment / climate change, social change, and technology. And I think that it's a great chance now to turn the floor back to the ministers, to whom I will ask the same question, actually, and see what their reactions are. So I will now switch to French for His Excellency, the Minister of Chad. Monsieur le Ministre, en tenant compte des analyses.
Esteemed Minister, so regarding all those analyses, and of course there were some previous threats, and also there could be some future threats, and with all those discussions in the countries as such as your countries, in order to provide support, what kind of systems could be established? And within the scope of international conditions, are they going to be beneficial? I would like to ask your opinion for that. Thank you, esteemed Chair. And I would like to thank 2 academicians because they have provided the typology in a very structural manner regarding the trends of the terrorism. Unfortunately, we can see that they are also fitting the reality of today. So this forces all the institutions to adapt, and of course they can act rapidly compared to the terrorist organizations. And when we have a look at these terrorist organizations, we can see that they can act much more rapid compared to the states. And of course, there is a huge load on the state. There could be the consultation, negotiation mechanism, and it can take longer time. And there could also be a consensus decision to be taken in the state. So while waiting for those decisions to be taken, all those terrorist organizations have the progress, technology, climate change, and also all those 5 trends. Regarding those last 5 trends, we need to have multilateral approach for today and also for the future, and it is going to be very crucial for counterterrorism, and we need to act together for counterterrorism.
vous êtes mieux placé pour le savoir. Déjà,
And
s'entendre sur la définition même du
unfortunately,
terrorisme, c'est un
there is a
problème. Et puis
tendency
ensuite,
to have
tant qu'un État n'est pas directement concerné, il ne peut pas
a
s'intéresser ou même
unilateral
avoir une
approach.
position
And if there is no
contre
impact on the country from the terror, then they do not take any actions for the terrorist attack in another country. But together with the new trends, together with all those new terrorism trends, of course, we need to increase and strengthen this solidarity. And in order to do so,
il faut que l'initiative ou que
so you
la
asked me
solidarité que
to give an example from our own
commence
country.
à la
As
plus petite
Chad,
échelle internationale, c'est-à-dire au niveau, par exemple, d'une sous-région.
we
Et puis ensuite,
are in the solidarity and it should start from the bottom line, and then this can expand from the bottom line, and then it can cover the entire region, the entire country.
Dans la
And
concertation,
of course, there will be the rules, the laws, and of course, the required negotiations will be carried out accordingly. And there will also be the financial audits. So in Chad, in the region of Chad, as I've stated, so around the lake, there is Cameroon, Nigeria, and also as the countries, we gathered and we established a common power.
et nous menons des actions communes. Nous avons obtenu des soutiens d'un certain nombre
And
d'États.
of course,
Et,
there
ça
is the
permet
power
vraiment
gathering all
d'avoir des
those
résultats
military forces, and we are trying to have joint actions. Then we find the solutions and we reach the solution. So this is also stated. Academicians mentioned each terror can be different. For example, the types of terrorism can be different, and it depends on the source of finance. For example, you can check Sahel region, and there will be the climate change, because it also increases the poverty in that region. And when you mention poverty,
comment apporter des réponses concrètes contre le phénomène de changement climatique pour limiter
this poverty issue and all those poor individuals are new targets for terrorist organizations.
la nouvelle technologie. C'est la même chose, la nouvelle technologie, c'est accessible pour tout le monde, y compris pour les groupes terroristes. On a parlé
And at the same time, new technologies. You know, there could be drones, and we mentioned those unmanned aerial vehicles.
Les groupes terroristes, donc en résumé, plus que
So they should be in the hands of trained personnel, individuals. They should not be in the hands of terrorist organizations. Compared to the past, there should also be the solidarity and cooperation among countries for counterterrorism.
le cadre collectif de travail qui existe aujourd'hui. S'il y a une concurrence entre les États, y compris dans ces domaines,
And
et nous sommes bien placés dans les
current working groups should also be established, and we have the knowledge, I may say, so there should be collective cooperation, and it is going to reach the solution. Thank you, esteemed Minister.
Minister of the Republic of Yemen. And just to remind everyone, considering the analysis that we heard from the two other panelists about past and emerging terrorist threats, how do you think, dear Minister, the multilateral system should adapt to better support countries like your country, Yemen, in facing these challenges? And do you believe that significant changes in the existing international frameworks are truly necessary? Please, Minister.
شكرا جزيلا. أنا أعتقد الموضوع الإرهاب موضوع كبير ومتشعب ولا يمكن.
First of all, I would like to thank you. This is a very complex issue, and it is really difficult to explain this issue in a very short period of time. Let me try to explain. This could be like a phenomena, a case, and there could be reasons causing it. So we need to identify it clearly. So far, for international communities, we do not agree for the definition itself. We did not reveal a definition. Sometimes it can be stated as religious, sometimes it can be stated as politics. So my colleague mentioned from Chad, we have the same problem. We experienced the same one in Yemen. Some of them call religious terror, terrorism. So according to bad conditions, we can also see very poor individuals or very young individuals can be in those organizations. We see those. And the main reason is social and economic. I'm not going to say religion. The religion can be a secondary reason. According to our experiences, I may express that. So in international policies, and also for Yemen, for some of the groups, we call it as that terrorism because it gives some harm to the society. If there is an international harm, then it is directly called terrorism. And we can see that international society is in desperate situation. This is my personal opinion. And as the country of Yemen, we need to focus on the solution. This is a must. But we need to act from the foundation. This should be considered as a social phenomena. We need to start this issue to be addressed at school level. We need to prevent and eliminate poverty. We need to strengthen institutional structure. Then we can overcome these challenges. And once again, strong countries have the responsibilities. For example, poor countries, they are called as terrorists, and sometimes it's the vice versa. So it takes a very long time to explain that. There should be a very long conference. There are different reasons, economical reason, political reason, for their reasons, and there is a very complex structure. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. That was a very clear answer, and I appreciate that you linked it very much with what your colleague from Chad was saying, but also the trends that were commented on by the other panelists. Let us now, because we have a few minutes, take some questions from the audience. Please, if you can make it really truly a question, and then we will invite the panelists to address them. Unfortunately, because of time limitations, I'd like to take all the questions as a group, okay, so that everybody has a chance, but we should be as inclusive as possible here. So I have Sir in the front row, Sir here in the middle, and then anyone else, please. We can't just have two. We need at least three questions. There we go, Sir here, and then we'll see. Sir, go ahead, please. And please, if you can say who you identify yourself, and then, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Omar Toure. I'm the president of the Commission of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, president de la Commission de la CEDEAO. I'm happy to hear the observations of the distinguished panelists, and I thought I should just make a short comment on global collaboration, global cooperation on counterterrorism. In my view, important points have been made here, but from our experience, what we think the global collaboration should focus on, as well as what they have said here, includes two forms of approaches. One, which is hard military approach, of course. Two, the non-military, non-kinetic approach. And in both approaches, the international community should prioritize three things. The first is elimination of fragmentation. We come from a region where we had a whole host of approaches, initiatives that are not linked at all. So that fragmentation is a problem. We wouldn't have time to go through that, but I thought we should be able to eliminate fragmentation. Second point, we should promote ownership of initiatives. The Honorable Minister from Chad has indicated the successes of MNJTF because of the countries were at the driver's seat. They were in the driver's seat. So we should promote ownership. Imposing solutions from outside will not work. It does not work. The MNJTF has succeeded because leaders, the four countries have taken the driver's seat and sought international support. The third point is coordination. This is extremely important. I'm not saying the various initiatives are not of any importance, but their importance or their impact is limited because there is lack of coordination. So that coordination can be done through regional organizations. And this is where the regional economic communities come in to ensure that even if initiatives are limited to 2 or 3 countries, they are coordinated so that everybody sees itself in the initiatives. I thank you.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for these extremely important comments that reflect your experience and wisdom from your position in ECOWAS. I really appreciate it. We had one question here from the colleague in the middle. Just stand up if you don't mind so they can give you the mic. Just so he can give you, yeah. And then we had a question there from the colleague right next to you. Yeah, exactly.
Hello,
Go
sir.
ahead.
My name is Numuche Traore. I'm from Côte d'Ivoire, Student Economic Department in Turkey. My question will be addressed to the Minister Abdoulaye, so I want to speak in French. Ok, Monsieur le Ministre, mon intervention n'est pas plutôt une question, mais un plaidoyer. En 2015, il y a un...
First of all, I do not want to ask a question. In 2015, there was a book written, and in that book, a conflict was stated in Chad Lake, and the president stated that the terrorist attack was in Sahel region, and it was not only because of the conflict, it was because of the climate change as well. And the problem was related to the problem of climate change.
Alors, mon intervention, c'est plutôt un plaidoyer.
And of course, we are in the diplomacy forum, and our expectation is to see a path that can be followed, and then we can fill the lake of Chad and we can find a solution for the problem.
Selçuk. My question is for Mr. Schmidt. I'm curious about your insights. Within the new generation of the terrorism, what are the best methods or measures in order to fight against terrorism, of course, except that military operations or military activities? Thank you in advance.
Okay, thank you very much. Now this is the last chance to ask any questions. Are there any other questions or requests for the floor? Just so that they can get ready, I'm going to give the first to Professor Smit and then to his colleague and then to the ministers. Any other questions? Okay, last chance. There we go. Go ahead, Professor Schmidt. You can feel free to address all of the questions or what was said by the ministers. Yeah.
Just address the last one. The best response to terrorism. After 9/11, there was a lot of discussion about root causes of terrorism in the UN. That discussion has almost completely been phased out in favor of another discussion. What causes radicalization? Radicalization, however, looked only at the individual that got radicalized. What happened on the middle level or on the higher level, international level, was zoomed out. And that has basically remained like that. Another emphasis that also came up was on financing of terrorism. Who finances the terrorism? Well, it's an important question, but most terrorism, certainly if it needs only a knife or a car to ram in a group, doesn't cost much money. So the emphasis where one looked for solutions was too much on the financing of terrorism, because after 9/11, the data that the US government had available were mainly on financial issues where they could easily find some solutions. And so we should return to the root causes. I mean, if you look at most non-state terrorism, it has been tremendously ineffective, but nevertheless it goes on. Why? Well, part of it has to do with revenge. If you, in counterterrorism, cause a lot of civilian casualties, well, all the relatives that survive will feel like going after revenge. So the revenge factor has been stimulated too much. One mistake that many governments have made is that they descended in their counterterrorism to the level of the terrorists, fighting dirty wars on terrorism that was started in Latin America. But that again is not a good road. Government should keep the moral high ground so that the difference in the ethics between what the state does and what non-state criminal terrorists do is always clearly visible. If that gap is disappearing, we are in big trouble. We are back to the law of the jungle. So my plea is go for the root causes again, rather than looking only at radicalization, and go for the communication aspect of terrorism. Terrorism is a combination of violence and communication. Al-Qaeda said Zawahiri, more than half of the battle is in the media. Well, why is the financing of counterterrorism so much kinetic in the military field and not in the media? Okay, some people say, well, we need freedom of expression, but you don't need freedom for hate speech. You don't need freedom for incitement to terrorism. But unfortunately, that battle is again getting more difficult. In the past, editors of newspapers, editors of TV stations could decide what should be covered, what should not be covered. Now, with the social media and with the abolition by Facebook and others of looking first at the quality of the message, basically they have abolished and forgotten about quality control, so that everything goes on the social media. And that, of course, is the wrong way to go. So, to summarize, the state should keep in mind that they should keep the high moral ground. They should look more at root causes than just at radicalization. And they should think twice what can be done with the media and in cooperation with the media.
Thank you so much. Professor Erkman, what do you think about this? And we have to end. I'm going to warn everybody in 7 minutes, so we have to be very short. I have to be very strict about this.
I underline another point. I think terrorism changed a lot in the last couple of years, maybe decades, because once it's based on hierarchy and pyramid style, old school organization cells, but currently terrorism is a kind of transnational network. It's growing. I mean, transnational terror networks are growing in all over the world. So we have to understand first the nature of these transnational networks. So maybe there is a motto for this: attack the network, not the organization or not the person or people. So, but what does attack mean? Do we Do we use the military ways? No, I don't think so. Because we can only fight against terrorist organizations by militarily whenever they become terrorists. We have to solve the issue before these organizations can recruit people. So we have to attack the root causes of terrorism, first of all. And just give me an example. In the last couple of years, we witnessed some people who came to attack another country after many years. And for instance, a person from any country from Asia can come and attack in the middle of Europe, or I don't want to give the name of the country, but some people from Caribbean nations, they came to Syria for fighting. So there should be a network to collect these people, coordinate these people, indoctrinate these people for a cause. So attack the network is the key word, I believe.
Okay, thank you for putting that insight on the table. Maintenant, je vais passer au ministre pour conclure avec des brefs commentaires. Excellence, Monsieur le ministre du Tchad, il y a une question.
Thank you very much. Everybody is benefiting from this question and answer session, and I think your comments are also very important, Minister. Thank you very much. Looking at all the presentations, we see that they are actually quite related. And the commonality here is how do we become more effective in counterterrorism? That's the bottom line. I think everybody is trying to point to that. And looking at the response to that question, and a colleague from Yemen had told me, this terrorism is not just dramatic, but also very passionate when needed. And it is so complex, you cannot overcome it in a short period of time. But to be able to effective for terrorism, whatever the reasons, what we need to do is come up with international close communication. Apart from that, what we also need to do is to come up with certain tools. Personally speaking, the military tools, and these are attacks from organized structures, and we have to come up with tools to counter them in Yemen or Nigeria, in Chad. When we are talking about climate change and its relation to terrorism, everybody sees that. Any location that has poverty, then there is a trend for terrorism, because then terrorist ideologies become very effective among those poor communities, especially the young ones, and then they are able to be exploited.
Faire face au terrorisme, il faut que les États
counterterrorism requires governments. I think you are from Côte d'Ivoire, if I understood correctly. Maybe you don't have too many problems there. But if there is no control around Mali or Burkina Faso, then you will start to feel the impact as well.
à la fois s'occuper de la sécurité,
We need
mais aussi
solidarity
du développement. Et pour ce qui nous
among
concerne, et je vais conclure
close
là-dedans, et
neighboring
c'est là où nous
countries
attendons la
especially.
communauté
I think
internationale,
that
parce que pour
is a
éradiquer le
summary of
terrorisme,
what I would
il faut
like to
commencer
say.
par gagner
It
la
is really
bataille contre la
important
pauvreté.
that international community comes together and we have to overcome poverty. Thank you very much. These are very important. Your response is quite valuable, Mr. Minister. And now,
أعتقد كان الحديث الواضح نحن أمام ظاهرة تهم المجتمع الدولي ككل وكما تحدث البروفيسور علينا أولا أن التعاون
what we see, as has been said, we have to struggle with the financing of terrorism. And terrorism is actually changing, and every country has different types of challenges and responsibilities that come together with it in struggle with this phenomenon. This phenomena is creating major challenges globally, and it is weakening countries. And
thank you very much. Well, let me just end by thanking the wonderful panelists for their contributions. I think we got a lot of good ideas about the state of the threat, but also the state of the international multilateral architecture. And I wish you all a wonderful continuation of this conference.